God damn it. Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson, and this is my review for Cats, which is based off the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical of the same name. And this movie adaptation is directed by Tom Hooper, who directed The King's Speech, The Danish Girl, and Les Miserables, and has an all-star cast. I would be able to tell you what the plot is to this movie, but it's actually really hard to explain what the actual plot is without cheating and just going over to IMDb. A tribe of cats called the Jellicles must decide yearly which one will ascend to the Heaviside layer and come back to a new Jellicle life. And the reason it's so hard for me to describe the plot of this movie off the top of my head is because that's the same as with the musical. The musical is a very hard play to actually say the plot of without actually reading up on it. So I think you would have to have been living in a cave to not know that this movie was coming out, because as soon as this trailer dropped, everyone, and I mean everyone and their mothers, made a huge deal about the way it looked. The designs for the cats look so horrifying, or just absolutely ludicrous, whether it's Judi Dench with that weird fur coat where you can't tell if it's actually a separate coat or part of her fur, Idris Elba dressing up like a pimp cat. Those designs were truly terrifying, and the entire trailer plays it out as if it's supposed to be an Oscar movie. And a lot of people were like, you know what, the designs look creepy, but I'm going to give this the benefit of the doubt because it's from Tom Hooper. He directed The King's Speech, which was great, and Les Miserables, which got a lot of Oscar attention. I wasn't a fan of that movie myself, but I can't deny that it was a big Oscar contender. And I wanted to be in that same crowd because I genuinely like musicals. Every time I think to myself, man, I hate musicals, I think of something like Mary Poppins, The Sound of Music, or West Side Story, which is my favorite, and go, alright, I do love musicals. However, every time I think of Cats, it makes me go, man, I hate musicals. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the play Cats, I absolutely hate this play. Before I actually get into the review, I want to tell you how I first saw this. Here in Hollywood Boulevard, we have a theater called the Pantages, where they pretty much show a bunch of famous musicals and plays. My mom wanted to see Cats long before I was born. It was around the time her and my dad were dating. So Cats eventually made its way into Los Angeles, and my mom wanted to take my brother and I to go see it. So she was excited. My brother and I knew nothing about it. And as soon as the play ended, she spent the entire ride home apologizing for taking us to that play because it was literal torture to watch that musical. So I might have went into this movie with a little bit of baggage considering how much I hate the musical, but I'm willing to give anything the benefit of the doubt because I've seen a lot of movies that I thought were going to be garbage, no matter what the genre, and thought they were great. Cats, unfortunately, is not one of them. I honestly tried to give this movie the benefit of the doubt, but in the back of my head, I knew this was going to be bad. But at the same time, I had no idea how bad this would be. Like, I was not prepared for how terrible this ended up being. And it's not even anything based off the musical itself. It's based off the designs. The one thing that everyone has been complaining about and making fun of ever since the trailers came out is the biggest problem with this movie. When you actually look at the trailers, the designs are creepy, sure, but some of the CG looks pretty good. Well, all the shots you saw in the trailer is the best CG this has to offer. What the movie offers that you didn't see in the trailer is some of the worst CGI I have ever seen in my life. It is just jarring. It looks like it came from a PS2 game, and there's a lot of points where the cat bodies are moving around, but the actors' faces are just floating and don't move in sync with the actual bodies. My jaw was dropped during the first 10 minutes of the movie, just being mesmerized at how terrible the CGI is. These cats are supposed to be motion capture characters, but apparently I read somewhere that Tom Hooper did everything you're not supposed to do with a motion capture performance. The actors didn't wear those black suits with the trackers on them, or have all the dots in their face with the camera mount, so the camera can record all the actors' face movements and put them to a CGI character. Honestly, I don't know if that's true, because I read about it on Twitter with no actual link to a source. But even without a source, when you watch this movie, it's not that hard to believe that they did everything wrong with a motion capture performance. And if you thought that cats looked creepy, wait until you see the cockroaches or the mice. There is a point in this movie, when we're introduced to Rebel Wilson's character, where there are a bunch of mice and cockroaches with human faces CG'd on top of them. And it's creepy. Like, it's one of those things where you'll watch it and you don't want to scream out loud, but internally you are screaming because it is a horror show right there. But the entire movie is played as a cheerful musical. Now, what about the performances? Well, most of the acting in this movie is singing, because Cats is in the vein of Les Miserables, where there's no actual dialogue, it's just singing constantly. All the character development you get from these characters is from the actual songs. And there are some actors who can definitely pull it off, like Jennifer Hudson, Taylor Swift, and even the newcomer in this movie. She is actually, if there's one bright star to this movie, it would be her, because you can tell by watching this movie that she's a very talented dancer and she has a beautiful voice. But her character is just not all that interesting, and I really feel bad that this is her first movie, because this is enough to really tank a career. In terms of the other actors, James Corden and Rebel Wilson are insufferable. I am not a fan of James Corden at all when it comes to his movies. I'm sure he's a really cool guy in real life, but between the Emoji Movie and some other projects he's done, he is just one of those actors where I see him in a movie and I'm just like, oh shit, this is gonna be terrible. And he and Rebel Wilson think that they are in some sort of goofy slapstick comedy, and then you go to the other side where you have Judi Dench, Jennifer Hudson, and Ian McKellen, who are taking this seriously. These actors really think they're in some sort of heavy-duty Oscar movie, and you gotta have everyone on the same page, and that was obviously not the case here. And on top of all that, when it comes to Judi Dench and Ian McKellen, they are acting in this movie so seriously that when they have to sing, it's laughable, because these two are not singers. Watching these two actors try to sing makes me want to apologize to Pierce Brosnan for Mamma Mia, because he couldn't sing in that movie to save his life, and now we've got a dame and a knight trying to sing, and they just can't. Like I said beforehand, Jennifer Hudson, Taylor Swift, and Francesca Hayward managed to pull off the singing, and so does Jason Derulo, but even then, the songs are crap. I'm sorry, I just do not like the songs of Cats, and I'll admit right now that that's my personal bias against the source material. This is terrible. Like, this is an awful, awful movie. Even if I distance myself from the play, there's so much about this movie that is so amateurish in terms of its filmmaking that it's baffling. It's baffling that Universal greenlit this movie and released it unfinished. Now, right before seeing this movie, there were stories that they were still working on the CGI for Cats and were going to release an updated version that the theaters were pretty much going to swap out. And I haven't seen the updated version. I don't think it would make any difference, because the movie bombed. The movie did not do well at the box office on its opening weekend, and spending more money to try to fix it is not gonna really make things any better. The damage is done, and there's a part of me that wants to be nice and say, don't waste your money on this movie. But this was literal torture to watch through. Every frame of this movie made me cringe. The best thing I could say about this movie outside of Francesca Hayward is the production design. But even then, that's not enough to save this movie. And if I feel like I'm being tortured when watching a movie, that is just some true disgust for me. And I ultimately have to say, burn in hell. This movie truly infuriated me. And again, this has little to do with my bias against the source material, because it's so amateurly made in all aspects except maybe the production design. It it's baffling. And the fact that Jason Derulo comes out and says, oh, these critics don't know what they're talking about. Have they ever made a movie? Yeah, some critics out there have made a movie. I don't know him personally, but C. Robert Cargill, who used to be a critic on Spill.com, now has a career as not only a novelist, but as a screenwriter for both Sinister and Marvel's Doctor Strange. So yeah, there are some critics out there that have made movies, and it's when actors come out and make these kinds of statements where I lose a little bit of respect for them. Especially when you realize that this is Jason Derulo's first movie himself, so that's kind of hypocritical right there. So I don't know what else to say. Like, this is really terrible. This is a movie that's so bad that Universal actually had to pull their entire Oscar campaign for this movie. I get that they're super fans of this play, and everything I've said about this movie is not going to change their opinion. If you want to go in and see the movie because you love the musical, then by all means, go for it, have a great time. Nothing I say is going to change your opinion. But for everyone else, and I hate to sound condescending when I say this, but for those who have never seen the musical but went into this thinking it was going to be a great Oscar movie and one of the best of the year based off the director and the cast, they were fooling themselves because there was no way. Like I said before, I wanted to give this the benefit of the doubt, but deep down I knew this was going to be bad. Nothing could prepare me for how terrible the movie actually was, but even then I knew it was not going to be good. And there you go, that's my review for Cats. Truly a terrible, terrible turd of a movie, one of the worst of the year, but I'm so glad I saw this. This is one of those really god-awful movies that comes out once in a while that I live for. This movie might end up going down the same path as Showgirls, in the sense where it's that one awful movie that's trying to be artsy, trying to get Oscar buzz, that you are just perplexed at how terrible it is. It might have the same cult following as Showgirls. I mean, considering how many times in this movie the cats are this close to an orgy, I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being called the Showgirls for furries. But now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Have you ever seen the musical or heard the songs? And if you legitimately like this movie, tell me why. I'm curious to know. Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, leave a comment, support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until then, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.